Hey,
Hello, hello,
look at all you people out there chatting away, talking about Crocs.
and stuff.
It's like I expected people to be clapping or something. I don't know why. I feel like it's actually weirder that it's the two of us talking, than when it was just me and I didn't expect anybody to respond to anything. Now there's like a tiny expectation
Oh, yeah.
that there's human response. But cool.
Yeah, so for me
Well,
it's a bit weird because I'm currently not monitoring the chat. Maybe I. Oh, no, it's too
Oh
late.
yeah. I mean, it's you're not missing anything. If they say anything good, I'll let you know. I'm being booed right now.
Well,
Um,
cheers to the chat and everybody who is tuning
yeah,
in.
cheers. Grab a beverage and settle in. So, yeah, this is our second artist talk, and for first one with two people in it. I feel like every time we do one of these, we should add one more person. So next time it'll be us two, and then like hopefully somebody else
Yeah,
steps up.
and I think making the setup more and more brittle and complicated, like just add more moving parts. So, like, I totally
Totally,
expect everything to fall apart later during the show.
totally.
So like because I forgot to add like audio or somewhere or things like that. So just yell at me when things don't work or don't
Yeah, for
because
sure.
maybe I'll not hear you. So
I know everybody likes live patching. There may be live OBSing also.
yeah, exactly.
Live scene design.
But I mean, I've seen AOC do that as well for half an hour.
Oh,
So the
well
pros
then,
do it as well.
totally. But yeah, like welcome to everybody who's here to hang out for a bit. I'll just give the brief blurb again on Basement State. We some of us knew each other in person. Not everybody did. Pre-COVID, I didn't actually know you pre-COVID. It's just through doing Basement State. But yeah, after a couple of months or a month or two of quarantine last spring when things first started, I kind of missed. Well, we all kind of missed, seeing friends and playing music together and whatnot. So, I think we tried maybe once or twice to do something, just sort of like a little private show on Discord. And, we were kind of like, well, why not do this on Twitch and maybe other people will want to come and hang out. Not to say that it's going to be like exactly like live music from the before times, but it would be a reasonable substitute, and sort of give us all the motivation to keep making music, even though we wouldn't be playing shows. And it's funny, like, I mean, for myself, I had ideas of playing a bunch of shows last year, and this year. But that didn't really happen the way I expected it to. But I think I probably actually, well, no, I almost certainly played way more sets this past year, just on Twitch.
Yeah, that's
Um,
totally the same for me. Like it has
yeah,
been such an active year in terms of music. And yeah,
yeah, for
it's
sure. And I
super
I had
motivating.
ideas. Totally, I had ideas around recording and like some live stuff that didn't work out, but like. Um, it's been great. Like I think we're all looking forward to doing this in person again. But
Yeah,
at the same time,
absolutely.
I think we all feel like, ideally this would continue in some form as well. And like I hope, all the other folks streaming music here on Twitch and elsewhere keep doing it. And at some level, because I feel like both things are good.
Yes, I
I just hope I mean, like anything streaming, it's like I don't think anybody's really making much money off of this, but I mean, that's just one factor of its enjoyment, I think.
but I feel like it totally has brought together some of the communities. So like the Colorado Synth Society events, for example, and like yeah. So now distance doesn't really matter that much anymore. It's just distance across time instead of space, I guess. So yeah, that's so if like for me it was super nice to get into all of these synth meetups in Discord, and yeah, just at least virtually meet the people and talk to them.
Totally. So yeah, do you want to just dive right in?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet. Let's show us your knobs.
All right. Yeah. So maybe I'll just start with like a brief overview of my system. So I've prepared this this small scene here, so you can see on the left this is the modular grid of my 2 modular cases. And so I had to just put these 1U tiles on the side like, for layout purposes. Yeah, so like I mean the rack I've designed in a way so that basically the more interactive this thing is supposed to be, the further it is to the front. So like in particular things like NerdSeek or the Maestro, or so like just things that I expect to interact the most with. And yeah, so like the modules are kind of arranged in a way of it's fine if they disappear in a pile of cables or if they need to be properly accessible. And so I use the modular like so I always expect to use a drum machine alongside the modular. So it's like just because it doesn't seem fully worth it to me to like do all of the drums directly in the modular. So you just need lots of sequencing and lots of modules just to give all the interesting sounds, and then you also need to mix it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I just it's like for pretty much all of these live sets with the modular, I've always used MFB Tanzbär alongside. So it's an analog drum machine, which it kind of has most of the sounds inspired from the 808, but also, for example, the kick drum or the snare drum are more closer to the 909. And yeah, so this is what I use alongside of this modular. And so that was the only other device besides the modular that I used in the last show. So yeah, I used the modular for like pad sounds, wide stereo stuff, creating like acid voices or bass sounds, and additional percussion that has like maybe more interesting rhythms to it. So like with Tanzbär I am fairly limited, so I only use it as a 16-step sequencer, and so this is kind of like the bass that does not really change much, and that is where it's very easy to follow along to the rhythms. And then like in the modular there's where there's more complicated stuff happening that is also not necessarily explicitly sequenced. So I thought it might make sense to briefly just show a bit, like just a few shorter parts of the previous live set that I played, just to talk about like the different voices that are in the system. And yeah, then I can afterwards dive into like how I actually created these different sounds.
Awesome.
All right, so I'll briefly switch to this patch video here. And so I'll just jump around so you don't have to listen to the entirety of it. So yeah, like here in the beginning, so this is so my chord voice that I have built. So it's so currently only Platz as a sound generator. And yeah, so it's processed through a pretty long chain that I will explain later. But yeah, you can hear like it's very soft and wide stereo, that there's lots of like these glitches, and yeah, I'll get to it, how I built all of these things and how everything interacts. So yeah, this was already a little bit further down the line. So here you can hear some of the drums from Tanzbär. So like these, the deep kick sound is Tanzbär, so this is an 808 kick. And you can also hear some percussion that is triggered by the subharmonicon. Now it's not in the frame anymore. So the percussion is played on the simulator here. So these two LEDs are whenever there's a percussion sound triggered. And yeah, it's still Plaits doing the chords. It's just now with an additional envelope. Yeah, then so further down, so this is again like just Plaits through this chain, but so with like even more modulation of some amplitude envelopes. So this was basically controlling the level in QPath to get like these coconut sounds, as they were nicely called in the chat. So yeah, further down, so here you can hear like a selection of different bass sounds that I was using. So it's kind of like a melody made in the arrangement. So like just sequentially going through different bass sounds that I had prepared. So 2 of them are just some samples from like some old jungle sample pack, going through a bit of saturation and a low pass filter. And so then this more aggressive bass sound. So this is a voice in the modular that I have built around a wave folder. And then a bit later, so here that's when it's getting more in the direction of acid. So this is made on the subharmonicon with like a few sequences around it. So it's not sequenced in the subharmonicon itself, but like just with separate sequencers. And yeah, lastly, what do we have here? Yeah, so this is still the subharmonicon, just with more intense sequencing. And like, yeah, all of these glitchy melodies, it's all just from sequencing the subharmonicon. So yeah, these are essentially the different voices that I want to talk about. And so yeah, I guess I'll just go through it one by one and explain the different parts. And yeah, interrupt me please when things are going too fast, or if it's not possible to understand what I'm doing. Yeah. So let's switch into the modular. So actually,
cool. I'm caught back up to real time.
Oh yeah, awesome.
I had to listen to that section through Twitch, so I had to mute our Discord call and unmute Twitch.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So I may have missed like a sentence as I transitioned over, but hopefully not. Actually, I have a question. You said that you had a bunch of different bass sounds and you were just sort of cycling through them. Is that right?
Yeah. So well, not really cycling through. It's just like sequenced in NerdSeek that way. So it's kind of like so in NerdSeek you always have 64 step patterns, or you can make them shorter. But so it just made like 4 sequences for the different bass sounds, and so like the first 16 steps one of them plays, the next 16 steps the next one, and so then like this wave folding thing, and then the aim and break, I think. So it's kind of like trying to build like a melody with the arrangement of the song itself.
Were those sounds samples from the NerdSeek or modules?
Or
samples from the assimilator.
So so the bass sounds were in the assimilator, and so the breakbeats are in NerdSeek. So
I see. And were those different bass sounds like on different channels of the assimilator that you were cycling through? Or I see, cool.
Yeah. So I can trigger them later separately just to show them. Yeah, so I also wanted to briefly show just Tanzbär, and so like I've gotten some questions. Well, in general, like there were quite a few questions about the mixing itself, and so I just wanted to show some of the sounds, like well, yeah, how just Tanzbär alone sounds. And so I'm using an analog mixer from the 90s. So I'm using a Mackie CR1604. And so this poor mixer, so like it's always overdriven. So like every channel has a nice overload LED. And so when I'm playing live, basically it's just like a visualization for the music. So like every channel, almost everything is basically overdriven a bit. So yeah, I'll just trigger a few of the sounds from Tanzbeer. So this is the 909 kick drum. So it's currently with a bit of reverb, as you can hear. So I can turn that off. And so now basically I'm just resetting the mixer a little bit. So this is maybe closer to what it actually would sound like. But so then you can just drive it until you're happy. So I always go like not fully in, and with the EQ you can also sculpt it a little bit, like just how the distortion will sound like. But so I always try to find like a balance that it's like that it has some additional harmonics, so that the sound is just not too quiet in the mix itself, but so that it's also not just overpowering everything. And yeah, like so this is something that I would also just live change. So it's always just in like the state as it was the previous time that I played with this whole system, and so I'll just adjust it as I go. And so then this one here is the second kick drum. So this is the 808 kick drum, and oh yeah, it's actually also going into a bit of reverb currently. And so the fun part about Tanzbeer is that like when you sequence stuff, you can also have pitch bends. So I'll try to create one. So you can just so now you can hear that the bass just bends up, and yeah, you all like the Tanzbeer has tons of glitches. Like it's never fully deterministic when you start to animate these things. So like actually gives it a bit more of character, but sometimes also can just be a bit annoying. But
is that pitch bend just sort of like a, I don't know, knob recorder, or?
So the way it works is that so with the encoder here, I select like should it pitch up or down, and like how much, and then I can just set this to a specific step.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's a bit weird, but it actually works
weird is good.
fairly decent for sequencing it live. So it's actually quite a bit of fun. So I use that a lot, like just like at the end of the sequence, for example. So like then it's kind of like your bass energy, like it starts very deep and low, and then towards the end of the 16 steps it gets higher and higher, and then like when you have like the strong kick drum as well at the beginning, then you just have like much more impact, I feel like. And so it's kind of like something repeating that kind of loads up and then has more energy, and so kind of pretending that it's hitting harder than it's actually doing, I guess.
Somebody asked like from our I kind of collected some questions from the folks from Basement State ahead of time, and again, like I said in the chat, if you have questions, please post them up.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody asked, what was it? I think they said, what inspires your kick patterns? Why no four on the floor ever?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I actually don't have anything against 4 on the floor. But so like whenever I program 4 on the floor, like it just immediately, like my brain pushes me to change it exactly. So it's kind of like, so like in general, when I play live, I always try to hear for like, is something going wrong? Like, is there a sound that sticks out? Is there something that is too repetitive? Or like, is just something wrong? And so like whenever I put like the standard 4 on the floor kick pattern, it's like immediately triggering my brain, like something is wrong, like you need to change it. And so like usually I will be able to maintain it for like 2 bars, maybe 3 bars, and then it's like, okay, fuck it, I need to just switch it up again and like make it like give it this asymmetric hits, I guess. And yeah, like I guess all of my life I mostly listen to music that just does not have the straight 4 on the floor kick patterns, but yeah, just like, for example, lots of drum and bass, which has like this 2-step pattern. And so I think there's tons of things that influence like these kick patterns. So for example, like when you have like a very mighty loud kick sound, then you just cannot really do 4 on the floor. So like it will just overwhelm everything. Like if I take this kick drum here, like it's already taking out so much space, and so now if you want to put like some bass sounds in between, then well, it actually sounds fairly okay currently, but and it like of course it does some kind of pitch bending currently because I forgot to reset it. But yeah, like for me, like there's immediately like so much space that is filled up, and yeah, it just makes me immediately like want to move things around. And but so the thing is, like when you do like these more broken up kick patterns, I always have like a pretty straightforward percussion to go with it.
Right. Yeah, you
so
need
like-
something super regular in there.
Yeah, so it's like almost through all of my sets, when you listen to them, it's kind of like the hi-hats just going through like a metronome. Like try to change it up from time to time a bit, but yeah, like it's just this foundation, and like the more weird you go, like the stronger you need to make the foundation, I think. So
It's funny. It's funny to hear you say that because I found like for myself whenever I try to do a non four on the floor kick pattern, it just kind of sounds like a mess, and I think it's because that's my like locked in really regular reliable thing.
yeah, so I think
And so like I have the same thing with hi-hat patterns where I'm like, oh, just doing the like offbeat hi-hat thing, like I know it's like definitely like a trope that you should embrace if you're making techno.
yeah.
And I do it sometimes, but it's just like after a few bars I'm like, just with the kick and the hi-hat just kind of like going off of one another super regularly, it just I feel the same way that you do about the four on the floor kick.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's like you have to put something like on the like this straightforward grid to just give you a sense of like this is how time goes, and then like if you have a solid foundation, then you can do what you want. But like so there's like the super complicated music where you don't have a single element that you can just follow, but like this music does not really work for me. So like because
Yeah.
it's like you can do fancy crazy shit with like swing and whatever, but I think you always need something to measure it against, basically. And so
Well,
that's
especially like if you, I mean, I'm sure people dance to some wacky stuff, but like I don't know, I need something to like metronome myself off of if I expect to like move around at all. Maybe I'm just not very good at dancing, but yeah, like
yeah, totally.
you need some sort of foundational element that's super regular.
Yeah, also like sometimes like the grooves become really weird, and like you just needed to find again like what plays against what, and like so like that's for example like then it's like when I feel like the rhythm is falling apart, like I'll just go even further and use like the open hat, because like it just has a bit more energy and just reinforces it, or like just add like the standard clap as well, just or so just to reinforce again, like so this is where this rhythm starts, and like this is how time goes, and then you can still do crazy things alongside. But yeah, I think it's important to have some solid foundation there.
For sure. Tom wants to know if this is your always like I don't know. What did you say? Spatial configuration here. I don't imagine you're like reshuffling where everything is regularly, right?
Yeah, so I've only reshuffled this whole thing once. So like I mean maybe smaller things like sometimes like switching out the Tanzwehr for like something else, but yeah, like overall like that it takes so much time to disassemble this rack and reconfigure it. So it's like the last time I did it, like everything like it took me over a week to reassemble everything. And so I try to avoid that as much as possible.
For sure.
Yeah, so just for completeness, I'll just quickly go through all of these sounds here. Whoops, some of them are muted, but you already heard them. Well, so I also like the low, mid, and high tom. So they are also conveniently panned a little bit. And yeah, so it just also helps with like making the patterns a bit more interesting. And so also I always use this guy here. So it's kind of like a shaker thing. So this one you can use like to fill in just some space, or like, yeah, just make it a little bit less rigid again. It's kind of like, so I always think of it like so you're kind of charging up the energy in the rhythm by like doing things like basically a bit off the grid, and then it needs to like this energy needs to unload as well again at some point, and so you can leave like a short gap and like to anticipate like a harder kick drum or something like that. Yeah, so this is something that I pretty much always do with Tanzbear. And so like just so for approaching sets, so I never prepare anything on Tanzbear. So like so I have this drum machine for so many years now, and I just know how to use it, and like I don't need to think about it, and just put the drums where I just feel in the moment they should be. So
Totally.
it's like
that's how I felt with the little TR-09. Like it's not super flexible, but it's a 909, so it fits with the music, and it's less things to think about. Which when you're just completely improvising all the beats is usually a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, as I said, it's so simple to do these quick patterns there, so that, there's really nothing worth preparing, in my opinion. So I'm just too lazy as well to do that. I think in general, so, like, that was also a question of, like, how I actually start preparing such a live set. And so the way I usually do it is, like, so I very often completely unpatch the whole modular, and so then I just play around with it, try some. So oftentimes, like the closer it gets to the to like the actual show, the more ideas you get of like what you really would want to try in exactly that moment. And so of course you would have to disassemble the whole modular for it. And so it's like, I want to try it, but you cannot. And so like after the show, it's just like stripping out everything, and then you can play around. And like most of the times the ideas were terrible and really not worth it trying, but I mean that's the only way you learn it, right? And
so, for sure.
And so then like but so it's just like playing around, maybe trying some variations of like the same things I'm doing over and over again, just to keep it at least a little bit interesting, I guess. And shuffle things up a little bit, like use a different filter for something, or like flip around some signal flow and things like that, and then slowly start to reassemble. Like, so it's kind of like there are lots of standard patterns that have emerged in my modular that I do very often, and so it's often like just playing around a little bit with some ideas, and then so like the closer it gets to the show, the more I just fill in kind of like my default patch for the rest of it. And so I often also have to adapt it a little bit, because like if you use one module which was core for like your standard patch, and now you're not having it because you used it differently, so then you have to improvise. And I think that's like how many of the sounds actually came to be in my shows. It's just
and like, you said, sorry, Christoph, you said that the set was just the Tanzbear and the modular, right? I mean, plus the Mackie, I think, plays a part.
Yeah. So so one thing that I can also just show quickly, I guess. I'll just briefly switch to this.
Yeah, Chris was asking about the Dominion.
So like maybe to give more of an overview here. So this is the whole rack. So Dominion 1 here, and there's OB6 on the left here. And so these, like in the last 2 or 3 live sets that I've played, I've just essentially used the modular and Tanzbear, and like sometimes maybe 2 or 3 drums from the rhythm. I think I've had like the OB6 in one of the sets, but it's going more and more towards the modular, I guess. And then down here, so that's my mixing stuff. So here's the Mackie. I'm not sure if you can read these. Like I cannot read it on the screen currently, but so it's so on Tanzbear I go I use the individual outs for the 2 kick drums so that I can distort them individually. And then the rest of the drums are stereo, so they already come with panning from Tanzbear by default. Then I have everything that I classify as bass sound from the modular that comes into this one channel, and you can see like I'm also usually not going light with the EQs. Like if I feel like there needs to be more bass, then I will just boost it, and I feel like there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, then like everything that I classify as percussion from the modular, then everything else from the modular comes in here. Like, well, actually that's a lie, but like everything stereo basically, or like pad sounds are coming in here. Then here, this is where I had the asset voice. And I think, yeah, like, well, this channel is broken. This is where the OB6 would come in, rhythm, Dominion 1. And so here I have another hardware delay. Whoops, sorry. Here I have another hardware delay that I'm also using from time to time. And so here, this is like just, well, audio interface, patch bay, and 2 hardware reverbs that I'm using. So one of them is the MIDI verb. So it's also some 90s standard reverb.
Classic.
And the Lexicon MPX1, I think it's called. So yeah, it's also something older. And so then below it is a Spring reverb that I'm currently not using. And so yeah, then up here, so this is, so I also have Eventide space here that I use from time to time. And then the RNLA compressor. So that, like, this one processes the whole stereo sum that comes out of the mixer. Yeah, I'm not super gentle with it, so I like the character of it.
Have you used the other one, the really nice leveling amplifier?
That's the really nice leveling amplifier. So that's the
This is, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So that's the one with more character. And
yeah.
So there's one important thing you need to do, like at least if you want to do bass heavy music. So so you can add a sidechain filter to the compressor, and so I built like a passive. It's hard to show, but like back there's some DIY.
It's a passive inline filter.
Passive high pass filter. I think it's roughly at 120 hertz or something. It was just like resistors and capacitors that I still had flying around that I just used for it. Quickly
That's
improvised.
awesome.
Yeah, then an old digital delay, and that's it. Oh yeah, and over here there's the heat, and so once it has gone through this compressor, then it goes through the heat. But the heat I always use like just very, very lightly. So just on the clean boost, just a little bit of EQ, like some bass boost, some boost on the highs, gives it a little bit more like, well, airy, high.
Yeah,
like
presence.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I guess, the right word for it.
Totally. Yeah, I have one as well, and I basically only use either the clean boost or the saturation. Unless I'm using like, at least on like the master. If I'm doing something separate, then I can go hog wild. But
Yeah,
usually,
exactly.
if I'm doing that, it's just as like an insert effect or whatever in Ableton.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is something that I wanted to mention. So like, I'm completely DAW-less. So I've made my music over 5 years now completely DAW-less. So at some point I just hated computers and started to build up the setup just so that I can jam without turning on a computer. And so like, there's no mixing in the DAW or anything. So like, so I've recently started to add what is it called again? Ozone in OBS, just as a limiter to just give it a tiny bit more loudness, and also as a safety net, like in case I'm doing stupid things, as evident like in the past. But yeah, like it's like, there's no magic mixing or anything. So like, the mixing that I'm doing is super basic, and so I think it's also important that it is so basic, because like, this is something that I want to be able to do live.
Yeah,
And
for sure. I've been doing the same sort of thing. I mean, I'm not even using EQ on my mixer, to be honest. Just doing everything in the various boxes. And my mixer is also an interface. So if I wanted to capture stuff like multi-channel, I could into Live. Although recently, yeah, for my streams, I followed Steven's mode and just just right at the master basically in Ableton. It is going through Ableton, but it's just like a compressor and like a overall EQ and a limiter or something, if I recall. Oh, and
Yeah.
I think I have that's how I'm using the heat, I think, as well, just
Hmm.
through Overbridge, just because it's easier than constantly repatching where it's going, and I don't have a patch bay. Um, Duffy asked in the chat if you were going to be playing live.
Hmm.
How does that work? Like what comes with you? Like would
Um,
you expect right now it to be the modular Tansbear and the Mackie?
yeah, pretty much. So I do have also the smaller version of this Mackie mixer. So there's also the 12 channel version. And so that one is much more compact. So it's still heavy as fuck, but yeah, it's so it's the EQs are even more simple. So it only has high and low, and but yeah, it still sounds nice. Like it has a little bit of a different distortion characteristic as well. But yeah, so well, currently I would plan like to take one of these IntelliGel cases plus Tansbear plus Mackie and like one hardware reverb. So like the Eventide. And I think that's enough. So like I'm sure like I certainly cannot do everything that I'm doing currently. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about as much as I have ever taken as like, yeah, one IntelliGel case, a drum machine, and an external mixer. Yeah. I mean a smaller one than the Mackie, but I was doing most of my mixing like just in the IntelliGel case.
Yeah, so
In fact, I think at least once I did it with my machine drum, just running into the inputs on the machine drum and using it as, I mean, not it just basically passed through,
mhm.
which was a nice like compact setup.
Yeah, so I've never played like live with the modular not from home. So like I prepared one of the live sets this year. So like one of I think two of the modular nights were happening at Substation.
Hmm.
In the end, I actually could not go, but yeah, I saw you had one of the cases prepared, Tansbear, Mackie Mixer, and I think the compressor and yeah, heat I was considering to take with me, but yeah, like certainly not this full rack. It's certainly a bit too much.
Totally. Yeah, I
And
think at least a couple of the shows that I've played, like I've just gone straight from work. So like I've taken all my stuff like on the bus, which wasn't ideal, but
nice.
you make it work.
And yeah, like there's always this alternative of just playing the rhythm only sets, and then it's just a small backpack, and that can
Totally.
also be enough.
Totally. Yeah, I keep thinking about I picked up one of those Dreadbox Typhoons a while back and like used it a little bit. In fact, I think one of the first streams that you came and just hung out on, you were like, "What is that Reese?"
Yeah, exactly.
Which was a Typhoon, but I was thinking, yeah, like actually that's a really cool duo to have that thing because yeah, like fun two voice analog with ridiculous built-in effects,
Hmm.
stereo effects, and then the rhythm is a fun combo.
Yeah, so one of the first sets that I ever played on, like before it was even Basement State, so I had the fire in the background, and so
Right.
that was a set that was meant to be portable or like something. That was the set that I wanted to take to Modular Nights. Um, all right, should I briefly go through like some of the sounds in the modular?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you have an order in mind, and or you may cover this anyway. So feel free for me not to completely derail you. But Justin asked in the chat as well what you were using the Morphogene for. So
Okay. Yeah. So the Morphogene, like the usage has been very basic so far for me. So like I never record, for example, when I do things live. So I only record accidentally, and then everything is broken, and I never want to use Morphogene again. But yeah, like
yeah.
so for most of the shows that I played, when I used the Morphogene, I was just using so like well, it's kind of like when I listen to something somewhere and I just like in general like how like not really the melody or like well the individual sounds but just like I don't know, like maybe the main atmosphere that something conveys. And so I think that's something that is really cool to capture with Morphogene. So because then you can just play like these smaller slices and loop them and just capture like this actual, yeah, like it's not this musical content that it was before, but it's more like turned into just like some standing pad sound or something that
For
often
sure, yeah.
still has like this like often it's some kind of tension or something. And so
Yeah, I've been trying to reignite use of clouds using doing the same sort of thing. Was just every now and then just freezing something and then maybe running some sort of modulation around so it just sort of slowly pans through
yeah, exactly.
its captured content. Yeah. And you know, if you've captured something melodic in there, then it will be related to the melody that's still playing, like a
Exactly.
bass line or something. And then, you know, crank the reverb and
That's it.
go for it.
Exactly. Delay, reverb, and
Yep.
you're set. Yeah. So yeah, and I think like so for example, like I captured from a German podcast on the coronavirus. Like they have some kind of it's supposed to sound like a dramatic intro, I guess. And so I just captured like a few seconds of that sound, and I've used it for so many of the shows now because like there are some sounds that just have so much content, or like I guess I should not spill that secret, but it's like so I love the Windows sound for everything. So like this Windows 95 boot sound. So like
Yeah, yeah.
if you listen to all of my rhythm sets, like you will find it everywhere. So like it's just so I mean so this the Windows 95 start sound was so it was these micro compositions that I just forgot his name. Like it's this ambient guru that did music in airports.
Oh,
And
you know,
yeah,
Brian
Brian
Eno.
Eno, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he did micro compositions, and so like he was basically compressing down minutes of music into just a few seconds, and the Windows
Yeah.
sound was the result of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like so, essentially, I'm unpacking the sound again and like using it for so much. So like you can do so beautiful pad sounds out of it. But I guess I should show that on a separate artist talk on the rhythm. So like, so in the modular, I try to stay away from the Windows sound just to have at least some variety. But yeah, it's certainly one of my absolute favorite samples. So even more than the aim and break.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I highly recommend dig into the sound. Loop like small bits of it. Morphogene would be the absolute brilliant device for that.
Yeah, for sure. Mark's excited by this knowledge in the chat.
Yeah, so I actually had the Windows sound in the Morphogene, but so it was victim of one of these accidental record presses, and so then like since the sampling is so annoying with Morphogene, I never
Yeah, for
bothered
sure.
recording it again.
Yeah, I had a brief time with a Morphogene. I bought one at Moogfest when Make Noise were doing their 10th anniversary, I think. And so they had a bunch of stuff on sale. So I got like a killer deal for it and I brought it back and it was just one of those modules that I felt like I never got past needing a cheat sheet for it. And I just I couldn't deal, even though the playback was pretty intuitive, like all the recording and switching tapes and reels, and I can't even remember the terms now, but I just don't have time for that. Like modular to me is about just like reaching out and like affecting something, not having to look up again. And clouds is kind of like that for me too, but more using the different modes. I can never remember which knob is what.
Yes, I think for me, Morphogene is one of these modules that is constantly on the list of like, I finally should dig in and learn it properly. It's like always, it's like, well, first of all, like often then I decide to do it and have some brilliant ideas how to try it out, and it's like super disappointing. It's like, that was not worth it. I'll go back to my regular usage and just stretching certain music. So yeah, fun fact. So for example, I also did the stream on Christmas, or like I think it was 25th maybe, or 26th. And so like, so my father had recorded some Christmas music, like multi-tracked it with his trumpet, and so I used that as the intro pad sounds and just destroyed and tweaked it with Morphogene.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but so to bridge it, so I guess we can just so like Morphogene for me is like part of the stereo voice. So like I use it to create like these textures and atmospheres, and so yeah, like everything that is related to atmosphere, that is like I always want to have like a like just more or less standing sounds that are really wide and like where you can just like so like kind of music for dreaming and like just losing yourself in the sound in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that has always struck me with your music is there's just always these ever-evolving, beautiful pad sounds in the background that I feel like I can never accomplish.
Yeah, so well, let's try to teach you then everything that I do. Like, I mean, it's actually a fairly simple process, but yeah, so I thought it would be nice to basically just go through the chain like once and see like what every module is adding at each step, and yeah. So I guess let's try that. So back into the modular. So I have this trusty patch cable here, so I'll just plug this in random places, and I hope you can hear what is coming out at these different positions. So like, so for example here, so that's Platts. So I use that for like in the chord mode most of the time. So like this is what it just sounds on its own. So you can select the chord inversions with one of the knobs here, and you can select the chord, and so you can find like these nice chord progressions in here. So it's just a natural patch point to add an LFO to, I guess. And so then here you have like it's kind of like a wavetable oscillator in here, so you can just scan through these different waves that it has. And so I'm like, it sounds pretty basic on its own, but like I mean it's nice. Like it just has this standing sound characteristic. It's very clean, and it's also super fast to just like. So when I want to go for a certain mood, I will just like turn this button and like, oh yeah, let's go for maybe this one, or well, maybe this one here. You can adjust it a little bit, and then you're good to go. Or like you just add a little bit of LFO here. And so now it's like just playing something in the background. Okay, so following further. So then, so I then use a sample and hold module to introduce aliasing artifacts into the sound. So in this modular here, I have 2 Dixie oscillators, and one of them I just use for audio rate modulation. And so I always have it at a very high octave setting, so like 6 or 7 or something like that. So it's like really high frequencies. Like I can briefly annoy you.
Oh boy.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, fun sounds like that, and sometimes
I couldn't hear anything because I'm old.
Sorry about that. Maybe let's go for this one. Yeah, so sometimes it will bleed through. So in one of the mixes in the background, you hear like a stupid, annoying melody all the time that was not supposed to be there. But like while playing live, I was already hearing it, and I could not find where it led through, and so it was just there. And so the whole set I was trying to debug, like maybe the sound comes here from here. It's like I could never find it. And so in the end, like it was bleed through in the quad VCA, so that was a bit disappointing. Yeah. Anyways, so I have these IntelliGel noise tools up here, and so this is what I use for the sample and hold. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just show you the output of that module. And yeah, so now if I so now you can do like these lo-fi aliasing artifacts, and so I mean that's already quite nice. So yeah, like so this is with the
sorry, that's running into the wavetable
no
selection.
Sorry, I just turned off all of the modulation in Platts. So this is kind of like the static version of all of it. And like, yeah, if I change the frequency of this oscillator that triggers the sample and hold, you will get like these different aliasing artifacts.
Oh, wow.
And so I have Metropolis wired to the pitch input of that oscillator. So now I can do like these melodies that you've heard all over my patches, I guess. And so this is what I use for that, and like then you can switch it around here.
I think this is the glitchy thing that everybody always comments on in chat during your streams.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, like it's just sample and hold. And so this one is currently like a small trick that I recently, like in one of these reorganizing the patch, came up with. So I always had this problem that I felt like it's a little bit too harsh and like too aggressive, and I would like to tone down this effect a bit. And so on the IntelliJ noise tools, you can select between sample and hold and what is it called? Track and hold, I think.
Yeah.
And so this one is awesome because so it kind of gives you like a dry-wet control. So if you use a square wave oscillator to trigger this, the sample and hold module, so you have like one phase of the square wave where the signal just passes through, and in the other phase it holds the last value that it sampled. And so now if you adjust the pulse width, so like now you can get like a clean sound and just like blend over to like the destroyed sound. And so it's just like with the using the pulse width knob here on the Dixie. So it's one of these things like it's kind of
so
like,
that's just sorry, monkey brain. That's the output of Platts going into the sample input, and the Dixie is triggering the hold, basically.
Exactly, yes.
I see.
And so, yeah, like so yeah, with this track and hold, you can now change the timbre of the sound by just changing the pulse width.
I don't think I've ever run audio through a sample and hold. It's never even occurred to me that it's a thing.
Yeah, so this was one of the first things that I ever tried with this module. And so like ever since, it's just always been in this configuration because I just love the sound so much.
Yeah, it's good.
And it's like, yeah, you can, it's like, so I like it a lot, like when the sounds start to sound a little bit like a human voice, but like, or, well, maybe not like a human voice, but
yeah,
like
it's like robots talking for sure.
Exactly. So like this kind of
it did sound like
robot
speech like.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so like then it's kind of like just a performance control here to change the octave of the oscillator. So like it's just like the further up you go, like the like it reduces the aliasing artifacts. So like it's just kind of like the equivalent would be like just dropping the image resolution, and so like you would get very jaggy edges like at the low octaves, and the higher you go, like the more clear your image would be. And yeah, like here, so like with the pulse width almost to full duty cycle, like then it's pretty much clear sound, and then yeah, just destroy it. And so, of course, you can modulate this with an LFO. Currently, it's disconnected, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, the frequency of it, just riffing off Nick in the chat, said sample rate reduction effectively. And yeah,
exactly.
So it's like the frequency is almost like, yeah, the sample rate, right?
Exactly. And so
then the duty cycle is related, but...
yeah, so the duty cycle is kind of like just how much, like... how many percent of the wave do you fuck up, essentially?
Right,
so like,
right.
Just straighten out. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
It just kind of like smears things with the track and hold.
Yeah, exactly. So like some parts stay smooth, like just as the original wave was, like while it is in this tracking period. And then like in the hold period, it's just like a constant voltage. And so that's
exactly
kind of what gives you this artifact sound. Yeah, so from there, it then goes into say I have mix up here in the bottom right, top, yeah, like here. And so this is what collects all of the voices that are supposed to go like through the rest of the stereo chain. So everything that is pad sound, atmospheric sound, whatever, goes in here. So for example, also Morphagene comes in here. Yeah, so this is something that's currently playing here. So this is from some movie, for example, like just some German drug movie, and like I just like the sound of this. And so like yeah, it's currently destroyed a bit by QPass, so I cannot disable it, unfortunately. But yeah, so roughly like stuff like that would come out of Morphagene. So then I can just animate like the slide position or something like that. But yeah, let's ignore Morphagene again, I guess. Cool. Yeah, so once everything went through mix-up, I then go into FX8 in the reverb setting. And so FX8 is just like this multi-effects module, so you can configure it yourself and load like which algorithms you want to have in it. And so I'm using like the most crazy reverbs. So it's called a mix of black hole and cloud algorithm. And so it's just like, yeah, just like tons of reverb, I guess. Yeah, it's a bit hard to show this currently, but yeah, so what you hear now is, so it goes into mix-up, then it goes into FX8, but it's currently fully dry, so no reverb. But then it goes through QPass, and as a last step, it goes through Mimeophone, but it's also currently completely disabled. But so what you already hear is like that things are wandering around in stereo. So what is happening is, there's the stereo input to QPass, and so it has stereo outputs for like different filter modes. And so I'm using the Smile Pass, which is like sounds a bit more like some phaser sound or something like that. I'll also just make this a constant sampling frequency here briefly. Yeah, so like it's a fairly subtle effect here. But so what is happening is that it's taking the Smile Pass output in stereo and feeds it into ColdMac, and in ColdMac you can there's like a panning algorithm in it, so you can have sounds and decide like is it on the left or on the right, and you can also use it to essentially make sounds swap the left and the right side of the stereo field. And so I'm using that with the two Smile Pass outputs, and then you have an additional input where you can have a signal that stays in the middle. And so I'm using the bandpass output for that. And so with that, like, I mean, it doesn't sound very interesting at the moment, but like, if I go up with the resonance a bit here, so it starts to sound more interesting. So I also will briefly disconnect this one here. Yeah, so it's just, QPass is modulated using Oct. So Oct is just 8 LFOs in one module that are all tuned in a way that they are, so like that you have as little repeating patterns as possible. And so I animate, like in QPass, you have 4 filters that you are controlling in total. And so you can essentially control like the left and the right side of the filter differently. And so 2 filters are left, 2 filters are on the right. And so then these filters are kind of, I think, in parallel. And so you can then also offset these individual filter frequencies. And so this is what happens with 3 outputs of Oct. So it modulates the filter frequency a little bit. So if I turn it on, and so it also modulates like just this spreading of the filter poles. And so with that, you get like sounds that just seem to randomly move around in the stereo field as you probably will not hear, but the stream at least, because I think you only get mono sounds.
I do only get mono. It's in the middle of my head.
Yeah, so sorry about that. But yeah, like at least the stream should hopefully hear things pan around a little bit. And so yeah, with QPass I've just done a few more tricks, so like just to give it a bit more character. So it has wildcard inputs, so it's not really clear what they are doing, but they seem to trigger some kind of filter envelope. And so QPass sounds amazing when you modulate it with audio rate signals. And so this is the second part of like these glitch sounds that I make. So I have, so again, I use the same Dixie oscillator at these high frequencies, and so send it into the wildcard input of the filter. So this sounds like, well, it's currently not doing that much for whatever reason. Maybe it's a bit too high. Yeah, so it just gives more of these like glitchy kind of sounds. I hope it's all QPass currently that does that. So yeah, that kind of further emphasizes like this kind of talking sound, in particular since it's like the same frequency as the rest of it. So like as the sample and hold as well. So if you combine it now like with this other downsampling, so now you get like these more glitchy sounds, and now I can also bring in FX8, so like just so now everything becomes way more dreamy. So like it's
that's what we like.
Yeah, so it's like so I don't like it when sounds become too harsh. So I always try to smooth it out in some way. And so, for example, that's why I use.
Is that a burn on me?
Nope, not at all. Like I mean, it's all. It's all taste, right? Like it's you need to assemble the sounds in a way that that fits for you. And yeah, like in particular for like these dreamy sounds, I just don't want them to be harsh. They are supposed to be nice and just weird, not offensive, basically. And yeah, so that's what I use this reverb for. So it just smooths out everything before it goes into QPass. And yeah, so I'm currently using like this audio rate modulation constantly, but so in practice I usually just also have an envelope control this this modulation of this wildcard input, so I can program this in the sequencer. So like this is these.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, and so now I can also change the frequency of this modulating oscillator again. It's getting a bit too cluttered, I guess. But yeah, like so now if you also change like the sequence to be not a multiple of 16, then like things change over time smoothly all the time. And so like this is how you get like these evolving, well, it's not really a melody, but like just a sound that like just relatively subtly changes over time. And so yeah, then there's a bit more feedback modulation here. So for example, triggering the other filter input like just with the output of the filter itself. So it gives like these bit more harsh sounds. And so I also just modulated the filter resonance a little bit with like one of the outputs of the filter. So the high pass filter is modulating the resonance of the filter now, and the low pass filter is triggering this wildcard input. Sorry. And yeah, so like that kind of distributes the sound very nicely in stereo and does weird things. But so like again, like as I said, like I don't want this to be super harsh, and so like so the standard trick is to just either you add reverb or delay, I guess. And so then
yeah.
Then like it goes
butter.
Yeah, so then it
audio
goes into,
butter.
Exactly. And so then it goes into Mimeophone as a last step. And so on Mimeophone, yeah, I think I already screwed the settings up. So it uses so Mimeophone is a stereo delay, and so you can modulate a few things. So you can, for example, modulate the delay time, of course, but you can do that also in interesting ways. So it has zones where you can essentially divide the delay time in power of 2. So it's kind of like a window that you're shrinking. But it doesn't do like this weird gobble, 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 whatever effect that like other delays do. And so there's like, so you can either change the rate, then it does this weird warble effect, or if you change the zone, then it just like uses like a smaller window of your delay buffer to do the feedbacks. What it also can do is you can change the delay time for the left and for the right channel individually. And so that's what I'm using. So to make things a bit wider again, and like just to add a little bit more of complexity there as well. But so I don't like it like that things are like constantly just off balance. And so you can also enable ping pong delay on Mimeophone, and so then it will just swap left and right all the time. And so now you have like these rhythmic delays that just swap side all the time. So I'll turn the Mimeophone on now. Actually, yeah, I think, is ping pong actually on? I think it should blink, shouldn't it? Oh yeah, right.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it should be. Yeah, at least it sounds nice now, I guess. And yeah, like again with Mimeophone. So what I'm also, you can also via a trigger, you can change it from forward to backward direction. And so, like if you, I'm not sure if you can see this in the video, but here there's like this LED which sometimes goes on and off. And so I just have one trigger that comes out of Pamela's workout that just like with some rhythmic subdivision just flips the delay direction. And so this gives like this, so it's kind of like the sounds move and rotate around you in a certain way, and then they suddenly turn back and go back exactly the same way. And so it, yeah, it just messes a little bit more with your brain when you listen to it.
Oh, yeah, I love that on the 4MS dual looping delay as well. It's good for that with the reverse for both channels.
Yeah, I totally love that. And then so as a last glitch thing, so you can, like as I said, change the zone. So now it's in the shortest zone. So it's kind of like, well, what you would use for like Harpless strong synthesis and things like that. So it's like, well, a bit glitchy and all of that. And so I just have, like, again, from Pamela, some triggers that sometimes just push the delay into, like, the shorter zone, which gives it some kind of rhythmic glitch sounds on top of it as well. And yeah, like, since I'm doing funky stuff in Mimeophone again, like you guessed it, it's getting a bit harsh and, like, stuff again. And so, like, then I can just finish it off in the mixer, like so I have a little bit of a cut of the bass, even though I think it's not really necessary. And so then I usually just also give it just a little bit of reverb, like from like one of these hardware reverbs on top of it, and so with that you have like this nice deep stereo sound that you can just get lost in and think about like what the fuck is going on, and it's hopefully not too easy to follow, like what...
I thought you were going to say think about live.
Yeah, well, you can do that as well if you want. So then another trick, since we're still at this stereo voice, I'll actually plug this here. So QPass also has a level control. So like I often have the problem, so like that, like this is just noodling on and on in the background, and like you need to add some variation because it just gets stale after a while. And so so I'm using Maestro. So Maestro is 6 LFOs that are always tempo synced to your clock, and so you can do like rhythmic LFO sequences with it. So you can say like, please use square wave, sawtooth, ramp, whatever, and do this in a sequence. And so this is what I was using in the stream as well. So I just added like a sequence of like rhythmic gates essentially. So I'll try to set it up again. So it's like falling ramp, then low, falling ramp, low again. So it's like would give you like 2 quick sounds, and then I just use like one of these triangle things, and again low, just so that it stays nice and sync. And so I now do So now I committed it essentially, and now it's starting to use this chain. And so now you have like these rhythmic sounds here. And so like then you can change the speed of these LFOs. And so that's like how you get the coconut sounds. Like, I think it's a bit too much drained in delay currently to fully hear it, but yeah, like this is how you get like these rhythmic effects of it, and then you can just change it up a bit by just going for different tempo divisions of like, yeah, these LFOs. Yeah, I think that's most of it, what is going on in this stereo voice. Oh yeah, one last thing that I also did is, so I also have a spring reverb in this rack. And so I think this is something that I did in the beginning of the stream. So essentially I created a feedback path from the stereo voice through the spring reverb. So on the mixer I can just, this channel here, turn it up. And so now it's kind of like feeding back the output of this stereo chain like into the input of, so like it goes into the mix up as well. And so
give me more feedback.
Yeah, like I can go crazy here. And
it's glorious.
And so like, since this is just a send that I have on the mixer here, so I was also using this for the drums, for example. So like, so not super strongly, but so if you just take the drums, send them through such an effect chain as well, they just also create part of the background texture. But it's so like, I mean, since it's just like completely smeared out drum sounds, like they just perfectly fit the drums, obviously. And so like, so that's what's super nice for just doing some kind of background sounds as well. And so like, then potentially you don't even need to feed some kind of oscillator sound into that chain. So yeah, that's the stereo voice. So yeah, if nobody has any questions about that, I would move on to the to some of the other sounds.
Yeah, keep on rolling.
All right. So
people are into it, but yeah, no questions as such.
Okay. Yeah. So then I would go for the acid voice next. So that's my acid voice. Sounds a bit disappointing currently. Yeah, so this is the subharmonicon. And so I'm using one of the oscillators and the filter envelope a bit. And so I think the magic is like in how I sequence it. And so I'm using the Metropolis, but only for sequencing the gates. So I can do like some just some rhythmic patterns here. Then it has, so this is what it would sound like without modulation and just with like the gates from Metropolis. So you can change the gate time a bit and influence it a bit. And like, yeah, you can just create like ties and rests and things like that. And so this is often already enough to get like an interesting rhythmic pattern. And then here I do have an LFO, which comes from Oct. Just to give the filter a little bit of movement to make the sound not that stale, and just it does some weird stuff. So like the Oct is not tempo synced to anything, so it's just doing its thing. And yeah, so by the way, Oct also like, so it's triangle wave LFOs, but it also has a CV input for changing the rate of these LFOs. And so I just also send in some trigger from Pamela to occasionally just raise the frequency. So Oct is the module here. And so like you should see like there's some LEDs here, for example, or here that are just blinking. And so they, like by default, they would just blink like in this constant pattern. And so there's just like these triggers that just changed up the frequency a little bit. So I always try to cover my tracks a little bit. So like, for example, if you have an LFO modulating a filter, like I don't like it when you immediately can hear like, oh yeah, there's an LFO and the filter. So I try to make it in a way that it's like either slow enough that it's not insanely obvious, or like the depth is small enough, or like just
same.
like just jumble up the LFO pattern a little bit, just, or like mix it with stuff. And so that's also what I'm doing here. So I do have, again, like the step sequencer down here. So this one triggers an additional envelope that goes to the filter of the subharmonicon. I think that might have been the wrong channel, or oh yeah, I turned it off. So yeah, now you can hear like these accents basically. Yeah, so this is what comes from here, and so I like that a lot, to just add like, so these are then accents that are just locked into the pattern, so just 16 step sequences, so you always have the accent at the same time, but like, so here, for example, the gate pattern is now 10 steps long, and so it just shifts around, but like at least the accent stays where it's supposed to be, so it kind of just locks it in a little bit. Yeah, then the subharmonicon itself also has a filter envelope, which is quite interesting because it doesn't re-trigger once it's in the attack phase, so it does the same thing as Just Friends. And yeah, this one slightly modulates it a little bit. And yeah, that's it essentially for the filter modulation. So I mean, obviously you can by hand also just make it a little bit more more drastic, and yeah, like, so then you can use the Mackie mixer again for just,
that's nasty.
Yeah, so it's has a very dirty distortion sound, and then you just add a little bit, as always, like just add some delays, some reverb on top of it, just to make it a bit less harsh, and like yeah, just give it some kind of interesting background stuff as well. And but yeah, like the main trick then here in this voice is that I'll make it a little bit softer again. So the way, oh yeah, sorry, I already was doing that. Okay, so this is what only the gate pattern would be. Sorry about that. So it's just like the super boring sound here. And so I use 2 channels of the Maestro to, so like this rhythmic LFO to actually program the melodies. So so these LFOs go into into 2 attenuators where I can mix these 2 different LFO voltages, and so then it goes into a pitch quantizer. So like, so this is this raising LFO which just goes through this quantizer, and so with like, so now things are completely decoupled, right? So I have the melody that I can control in the way of like, I want it to go up, I want it to go down, I want it to stay at high voltage or at high pitch, low pitch. And so then I have the second channel where I can just add like some modulation on top of this main melody.
Oh man, I love it when you do that. It sounds so good, and I like kind of had some idea what you were doing, but not the exact modules. And I was, yeah, it's surprising to hear that it's Maestro.
Yeah, so I really like.
And so, sorry, in the mix-up, you're combining an output from Maestro or 2 outputs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's 2 LFOs from Maestro that I'm combining here in triplat. So that's like the bottom left here of the case. And so then this combination of the 2 goes into the quantizer, scales, IntelliGel.
Yep.
And so there you actually kind of program part of the melody as well. So like, I'm not sure if you can see that here, but there's like, here you just tell it like, these are the notes that I want. And so you just go for something that just sounds like techno, I guess. So I find it pretty hard to find good patterns there like that actually work. So like, for example, I think like if you just use like minor chord, for example, it's just, I don't really like it most of the times. And so, yeah, like just something with lots of like just one semitone of difference between the 2 notes gives like, I guess, this darker acid sound.
Yeah, for sure. And so you said that, oh no, wait, you said just the gates are coming from Metropolis, right?
Exactly, right.
Gotcha.
And so yeah. So usually these quantizers, you can trigger them so that they only would change the pitch like at the beginning of a note. But I purposely don't do that to just give it more of like this glitchy like C64 music like from these fast arpeggiators. And so yeah, like again, so you can change the speed of the LFOs here with Maestro. So you can do like these. Just faster LFOs here to give it more of this chiptune sound, I guess. It's not fully working that well currently, but yeah, so something along those lines, I guess. So it's always a bit fiddly to find the exact sweet spots. And so then one last thing, so I have a third channel here in this attenuator that I send to the clock divider input of the subharmonicon. So here I basically go up in like the different subdivisions of your oscillator frequency. So I can also send that on top of it. So that's like when it goes completely berserk. And yeah, like again, like this is yet another channel here on the Maestro. And yeah, just like since these melodies are so weird, like from these subdivisions, like the mixture with this other melody, I just like how wrong it sounds, but it's kind of also like since I repeat it enough, it's also kind of acceptable, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I like that you don't start there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's like
it just as that melody is going, like you I feel like you slowly introduce some of those
yeah, so this is
crazy pitch craziness.
Yeah, so I think that's in general what I try to do, that like so I never want to fully start like with the full complex thing. So because like I'm just thinking like if I scroll through Instagram, for example, and there's like a patch that is just mega complicated and like it just like I cannot parse it fast enough and like I cannot get into it fast enough, and so I will just continue scrolling basically. And so for that reason, like I feel like you need some kind of introduction first so that you understand like, okay, there's a rhythm, I can trust it, like it will stay somewhat okay, and so I can spend my brain power on like understanding the sound maybe, and then the sound starts to change, so you understand like, okay, maybe I should focus on the sound now, and like just go with the sound. And like so I try to not be too fast with changing these things, like just to not lose people when things go crazy. And so like I usually also try to not stay too long on like these like super crazy settings here, like well, no, yeah, if you go like for something completely jumbled up, and then like so like somebody that would just step into the room and hear stuff like that, I would just go like, yeah, what the fuck is that? Like this doesn't make any sense, because like you just because you lack the context of like what was before basically, and so you so like this is trying to go somewhere new where like maybe unusual sounds, but I feel like you always need to start like somewhere like that the listener can first relate to, and then you can understand like where this stuff is going, or you don't know where it's going, but at least you're kind of okay with going with it, and like are somewhat willing to follow it and not like just plain out reject it.
Exactly. I mean, it sounds related to what you were saying earlier rhythmically about having something to sort of like keep you sane. You know, it's like you need something regular, even if the rest of your rhythmic section is fairly irregular. If you have like a hi-hat or a kick or something to sort of lock into, then you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
And same thing with like the evolution of stuff like that. Yeah, it's like I'll start you here where it's nice and calm and familiar, and then I'll take you places.
Yeah, but so then I also try to go back to like some sane, calm space again, like where you can say like, okay, so first of all you get like a short rest and can say like, that was crazy, and like, okay, that's enough, and like just rest your ears a little bit, and like just
ride the waves.
Yeah, exactly. And then then you can go somewhere else and like do something else. So since you said rhythmic stuff, so I forgot to show like the small percussion stuff earlier. So I'll just do that quickly now. So I have some additional percussion sounds on the assimilator. So that's here it's an 8-voice sampler module, and so in each of these channels of the sampler you can load multiple sounds. So you have, I think, what is it called again? So you have channels and you have zones. So zones are embedded inside of channels, and so you can then essentially have different ways of like how to select the samples that are in the different zones. And so one of the ways you can do it is that you can just cycle through the individual samples that are in there as zones. And so this is what I use for my percussion. So I just like in one of these channels of the assimilator, I just load multiple percussion sounds. And so then each trigger, it would just go through this chain and go to the next one. And so it's kind of like a small sub melody of drums. So I'll just... So these are just like these small, a bit glitchy drum sounds. And so this is just what is happening on this one channel here. So it's kind of like just the same melody over and over again, like if you think of drums as melodies. And so I have 2 channels of that. And so I try to always use like a number of samples that does not divide like by 4 or 8 or something like that. And so also like for these 2 channels for them to be different, just so that you have some variation. So this is the second channel. So just like some more high-pitched percussion here. And so these I sample from the subharmonicon. So the subharmonicon here has like this polyrhythm section. So you have 4 clock dividers and can decide like, so you have sequencer 1 and 2, and you can assign them to these 2 sequencers. And so they are just combined with a logical OR. And so when I turn this on now, so like I have this top sequencer here that controls one of the sounds here, and the bottom sequencer that controls the other one. And so I can like change the subdivisions here to change the, to change the speed. And so then you can use more, like, so that's how I usually do it. Like I always have 2 for each of these channels and then just go for different divisions. And so then this combination of all of them together just creates like these more complicated rhythms that are, at least for me, pretty hard to follow. Like, so, I mean, it's kind of familiar since you always have the same melody of the drums, but it's, so like the spacing is not even between the sounds, and it's just going on in weird ways. And so the sounds at this point are, so like, the sounds are meant to be like very like subtle, so like they are not like very powerful drum sounds. It's like just because they are not supposed to distract, so they are just kind of like more filling out the background a little bit, make it a bit more interesting. And so there's one last thing to it. So the assimilator, it can do phase modulation, so kind of like FM. And so I use that on the drum sounds as well. So I again use the Dixie oscillator for the phase modulation on the sampler here as well. And so here with this top sequencer, I can control like how much of the phase modulation should be happening. And so now I have like yet another layer of like things that are varying. So like just repeating like how glitchy the individual drum sounds are.
Totally. And that's how most of the like digital like FM modules work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With phase modulation, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is I think this is all of the percussion that I used. So it's just like so you have a clock output on the subharmonicon for each of these 2 sequencers, and so that's what I just use as trigger in the assimilator.
I love that you're using subharmonicon like this. It's like it's a sequencer that's sequencing drums and then an acid voice.
Yeah, so it's like I never fully like. So I tried to use the subharmonicon as is, but like it was not for me. So like it just totally does not match like what I want to achieve. So it's kind
For
of
sure,
like,
yeah.
it's like it's meant to do like weird melodies and things like that, but it's kind of, I mean, maybe I just need to spend more time with it, but I never really got into it that much. And so I started to, so like since I did not like it as the sum of all parts, I just started to isolate like which parts can I extract from it and use independently, like just to make use of the module still. Yeah, there's one last thing with the subharmonicon that I also forgot to show. And so like, so I always run out of mixing power inside of the Eurorack. So like I don't have that many mixers here. And so I always have to, combine things in weird ways. And so I wanted to, for this glitchy acid voice, I also turned it a little bit into a pad sound. And so I just routed it through Morphogene because it has stereo input that I can just blend with. And so I can just go to like, please listen to the subharmonicon here, turn it up here. And so now there's like, it's kind of the same, well, it should be some glitchy melody, but again, apparently I did something wrong. Yeah, that happens a lot to me with the subharmonicon, that it just does not do what I think it should be doing. Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter that much, but why is that? Whatever. I don't. Yeah, so like at some point in the live set, there's like, so the acid voice gets even more glitchy and turns into a pad sound. And so that it was like, so one side, like one of the oscillators I used for the acid voice together with the filter. And so then the left side of it, I used just two of the sub oscillator outputs. And so I fed one of the sub oscillators into the left input of Morphogene, the other one in the right input. And then it also just got through this chain. And so it had like very similar modulation. But yeah, actually, there was something cool about the modulation, but it's a bit unfortunate that I cannot show it. So with ColdMac, you have the min and max outputs. And so I was using, oh, now I know why it's not working, because I disabled the LFO. Let's try that again. Yeah, it still sounds a bit weird, but so essentially I was using like a ramp LFO, and so the ramp LFO is split into two phases, and so with the minimum and maximum of ColdMac, and so I feed the minimum into just directly into the 1 volt per octave of the of this left oscillator. So it gives like this continuous rising pitch. And so then once it has reached a certain threshold, the voltage for this oscillator stays constant. And so, but then the second voltage is rising, so from the max output. And so this is then fed into the subdivision control voltage. And so it kind of like so for the first half, it does like this continuously rising pitch. And then it suddenly starts like to trigger these different subdivisions of this oscillator. So it's a bit hard to hear currently with all of the stuff going on, but yeah, like this is something that I wanted to explore more. Like it seems very fun to use like this min and max in a way that you first modulate one thing and then the other one. So it's, yeah.
And where's the source of that coming from?
So this is the yet another LFO from the Maestro. So it's like one rhythmically, so currently it's just a ramp that goes up. And I think I was slightly modulating the, like this cutoff point, like when it decides to modulate like either the VCO directly or just the sub oscillator.
And the min max thing is basically like positive or negative voltage, right?
So this is
like the threshold is at 0 volts. I can't remember.
Yeah, well,
it's my that was once my ColdMac. I'll add to the listeners at home.
Yeah. So so I mean, you can, so like the LFO that comes out of Maestro is from 0 to 5 volts. So I just set like the threshold to something like 2.5 volts.
I see. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it could be set to bipolar or not.
Yeah,
The Maestro.
you can also set it to bipolar. But yeah, for
Right.
things like pitch, I feel like it's more natural to just have like this unipolar one.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so after we've done the acid voice, we can go to the wavefolding voice. And so that one is using the IntelliGel bifold and Mutable Instruments ripples and one of my Dixie oscillators. And so the tricky part of it is like, so the wave folder, so it's actually two wave folders and you can blend between the output of the two. But the wave folder also has a feedback input. And so I know that it's basically forbidden to go from wave folder into filter, but I do it anyways. And so I go from the output of the wave folder into this into the filter, and you're listening to the low pass filter, but the output from the band pass filter is fed back into the wave folder itself. And so this gives it like a very electric sounding, like it just very aggressive, unstable sound. So this is this one here. And so yeah, I can hear like it's a pretty unstable sound that just has like lots going on. And so the wave folder has multiple inputs for like just controlling like the fold intensity. And so you can control both of them separately. And so I just have, so I'm using Just Friends to modulate bifolds, like just the two fold intensities as well as the mix. And I think to also control the filter frequency. And so yeah, then you can do like these rhythmic patterns that you also described in your artist talk. But yeah, like this is one of these voices that for me, like it's very intense and like so that's why I don't use it for a very long time. So like it's like a fun effect to raise like the intensity a little bit, but then like
I realized I was muted when I just asked something.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember. I think you mentioned this earlier. You're triggering Just Friends from Pamela's new workout or something?
Yeah, exactly. So let me. Cool. Yeah, it's the channel 8 here, so it's like it just leaves out one trigger, I think. And
I see.
I think yeah, it's like not just straight, but like just some
7 out of 8 Euclidean sort of
yeah,
thing.
something like that. You can. Well, how does it work again? Fuck, I always forget how to use it. Yeah, and it's using the 2.6 multiplier just make things go a little bit off the grid. Yeah, like. And yeah, like, so this one, here's the feedback path, and so now you can hear, like, it's much more relaxed, but like, so when you do feedback paths and you use a low-pass filter, for example, then you often just get, like, standing, like, some very stable sound out of it.
Yep.
But, like, if you use a high-pass filter or a band-pass filter, like, this cannot happen. Whoops. And so this is what you can hear here, like.
Yeah, the other thing that I used to like, well, still like doing with Just Friends is to then take, like a sample and hold from anywhere, really, and run it into control time. So then those rhythms coming out of Just Friends are evolving as well.
Yeah, so this is something that I, like, for these live performances, I just did it manually just to find, like, different sweet spots and...
The FM knob is good for that too.
Yeah. Well, all of this stuff is very good, like, just...
Yeah, it's great. It's such a happy accident machine.
Yeah, totally. And it's like rhythms that you never would come up with, like, by hand. And so it's very fun. But yeah, like, since this is such an intense sound, it also has limited lifetime, I think.
Yeah, it can be too much.
Yeah. Yeah, since we're at bass sounds, so So this is one of the sounds that comes out of the assimilator. So it goes through. So I collect all of the bass sounds here with just some Unity mixer here. And then all of them go, like the mixed output goes through 10H, which is like a soft clipping module essentially. And so from 10H it goes into Polaris here, like this time. So like usually I use ripples for that. It's just mixing things up, I guess. And yeah, like so this is just like one of the Reese sounds that I have in here. I can try to increase the pitch a little bit. Yeah, and it's like just basically finding the sweet spots of like adding the correct amount of saturation at the right point. And I think ripples is much better for that. So it's like, ripples you can drive like crazy. So I have the new version of it. So it already has like a saturation at the input built in, and like, yeah, it just drives very nicely and can be nice and aggressive. So that's what I used previously for like for the bass sounds. And yeah, then the second bass sound is also like just some low sound here. And yeah, like so these are then sequenced from Nerdseek. So yeah, like just sometimes change pitch a little bit, but not too much. So like, well, the standard pattern of like +5, +7, and +12 semitones, I guess. And like just trying to, well, like, so the higher you go with the sound, like the more aggressive it feels. And so you can do again like this progression of like going from low to high, and like at some point all of it resets itself again. And so like if you remember from like this techno live set that I did, so I also had these I think it was different samples, but I also had some bass samples in here. And so I was just using the phase modulation for making again like these crazy robot noises out of it. Yeah, that's not too nice, but so that's how you can make these robot noises here in the sampler as well. So like just phase modulating a bit as well with this melody. So like
It's funny because I was going to say now it sounds like a industrial music electronics module suddenly, and like yeah, the Hertz donut is all about the phase modulation.
Yeah, so this is tons of fun with a simulator. Like if you want to do glitchy sounds, like also for pad sounds, it just works very nicely. Yeah, then so I also had some pad sounds in here. I don't think I've used all of them. So yeah, like just again some sample that I stole from somewhere, and I guess I didn't save it properly. But so like so when I played the live set, I just looped a segment of it. So that's what I use on the rhythm, for example, a lot. So that I would just take some kind of like pad sound or something that I like, or the Windows sound, for example, and then you just loop a small bit of it. And so then I do this on two voices, and then you can create like 2-note chords with it. And so like since I usually already use stuff that itself is a chord, like you can do pretty complicated chords with it that often sound very nice. Like in particular, you just like when in doubt, just throw it through lots of reverb, and then things always sound nice, I guess. And yeah, like yeah, yet another pad sound sample. So yeah, it just so a simulator, like, well, except for the percussion, is sequenced by Nerdseek. And yeah, I guess like as a last thing, I'll briefly show like how I do breakbeats on the Nerdseek. If we like, how late is it? Do we still have time for that?
It was 9:45.
Yeah, we can do it. All right. So yeah, like it's not very easy to read it, unfortunately, but yeah, you should see the output or like the screen of Nerdseek now.
Yep.
And so Nerdseek, like for these that don't know it, so it's a sequencer that is like an old tracker from like the Amiga times, and so it's basically just so you just have like lines of notes, and so you can program like I want to play a C, a D, whatever, sequentially, and you can also add additional effect commands to it. And yeah, it's very similar to standard sequences. It just looks a bit more nerdy, I guess. And yeah, so what is nice, like in particular about NerdSeek, is that you have this large display, you see a lot, and you have tons of very fine control over everything. And so I use NerdSeek. So NerdSeek has 6 CV sequencer channels, and it also has 2 sample channels. And on each of these sample channels, you can play 2 samples. And so the way I use it is, so I first of all have, one of these I use for bass sounds as well. So you can play, so it has inbuilt oscillators. And so I just use 2 oscillators that are detuned to each other, playing on one of these sample tracks, and then also feed it just into the summation of all bass sounds. I can see whether I can start something here. Yeah, so it's nothing too crazy, but if you configure the mixer correctly and it's a bit too driven currently, but yeah, can do some nice bass sounds with that as well, without wasting another module for it, I guess. Since this channel is usually just there and not really necessary. And the other channel I use for my breakbeat stuff. And so the way that I approach breakbeats is, so I just have, you can load a few samples on NerdSeek into memory. And so then for each of the steps, you can trigger a different sample if you want to. So you trigger it at a certain pitch, and you decide which sample slots. So here, all the way on the left, you will not be able to read it, I think. But so here is where you would enter the note. Then you can select the sample. And then here is this effect command that I mentioned earlier. And so
and they're sequencer effects, right? Like MIDI effects, not audio effects, just to be clear.
Yeah, it does have some audio effects even. It has some delay built in, things like that. But yeah, it's not something that I use. It's a bit weird and very, very lo-fi. But yeah, so on the right here, you would be able to see the list of samples. So I have in slot 0, the Amen break, then Cold Sweat break, Funky Drummer, and Sesame Street. And so I pre-processed these breaks so that they all are a multiple of 16 steps long, and so that they all are at the same BPM. And so then there's one last thing. So NerdSeek has very limited amounts of sample memory, so it's around 2 seconds. And so I just pitched up these samples like crazy just to make them fit. So let's see if I can play one of these. So I think this is the original pitch. So that was the Amen break. And yeah, so then the way that I approach the all of the slicing and everything. So first of all, I think it's 2 octaves pitched up. So now it sounds much more like the Amen break. And so the first thing is now so you need to make the length of the sample match what your sequencer tempo is. So if I put this on every 16th step, so now it just it doesn't match the tempo. So you either need to pitch up the tempo a little bit, or increase the tempo a little bit, or pitch down the sample a little bit. And so I think this should be 152 BPM. So I'll just briefly try it. Yeah, so now it nicely lines up and loops. I can remove 2 of these sample triggers, so now it's playing the whole break twice over these 64 steps. And so one of these sequencer commands here is that you can essentially just shorten the sequence, which I will do just so that I don't have to program too much. So here, this is this break command, which just means jump back to the first step in the pattern.
Totally. It's a reset, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now you can see the cursor is running through here multiple times. And so the way that I do the slicing of the breakbeat now is there's also a sample offset command. So like it allows you to jump to a certain position in the sample. And so the cool thing about these trackers is that basically everything that they do with hex numbers. And so the cool thing is like, so now you don't have like this stupid decimal system where like you would divide things into 10, but into 16. And so 16 sounds like 16 steps of your sequencer, right? And so basically, so I do have, so here, this is the offset command. And so then it has an argument here, like where to jump in the sample. And so I can just set this number here, like for the leading bits, like between 0 and 15. And so this would, so like since my sample is 16 steps long, it just directly corresponds to these slices. And so I can just go in here and like just jump like in the sample wherever I want. And so it's super fast, like just go here and like just select, and like at some point you kind of start to remember like what number is where, or you just try it out a little bit. So like oftentimes it doesn't sound bad even if you do something stupid. You can just start to build more complex things there. And but yeah, it's like by far the fastest workflow that I have ever seen for like slicing breaks, because like basically everything is already prepared. You don't need to do anything. And what I think is really important and is that you're not losing the original groove of this breakbeat. And so like if you would go and take the breakbeat and just slice it mechanically, or like just slice out the individual drums and sequence them again, then you're losing like this natural feel of the break, because like not everything is landing on the grid. And so like you would be way too lazy to program out like just leaving the rest of the break play out. But so here, so like the sample will always just continue playing until the end from where I am. And so I can just, okay, so this is a horrible example because yeah, so now it just plays like a sequence or a segment of this breakbeat, and I don't have to do anything, but I can just very easily do something else here and can do, like I can change the pitch if I want to. Okay, now I'm running out of sample because it's played too fast, but yeah, so this is how you can do like these things super quickly. And so what is then cool, so like I mentioned that you can also select the sample that is playing. So like, so it's currently playing this sliced whatever it is, and so I can just change the sample slot here. So now it's playing the second sample that I have, or like, and so it's like it's a super fast workflow. So this is something that I can even do live. And so as I mentioned, like you can actually have two samples playing at the same time in this one sequencer track. And so I can just take, like, for example, this part here, whoops, copy paste it and just paste it in here. And so now I have like this layering of the two breakbeats playing. And so this is how you get like super nice breakbeat results. At least I love it. And yeah, it is like, I've shown you how fast that is, right? Like this was completely from scratch essentially. And so then, yeah, like it's very lo-fi, of course. So I'm using like the mixer is driven again. Like I use the EQ quite a bit. So like since the sample is pitched up so much, like if you pitch it down, you're losing all of the high frequency content. And so it sounds a bit dull, but like it's nothing you cannot solve with more saturation, right? Like just add some distortion.
Well, and it's sitting with them in the mix with other things too.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't have to stand alone. Although, I mean, I like grungy lo-fi samples like this anyway, so
I mean, yeah, you can drive it too far, but like so I like 10H, for example, also a lot. Like it does very nice things to the aim and break in particular. So I also have the Erica drum mixer. So that's actually where it's currently running through. So it also has a compressor built in that can also sound nice. Doesn't always sound nice, but yeah, it's something to play around with. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all of what I had prepared. So like yeah. So I'm very happy to answer more questions if anybody has some questions.
That was a lot.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean,
my brain hurts.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can also, of course, always feel free to just message me wherever you can find me. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about this stuff. So like, I mean, there's nothing secret about it or like nothing.
I mean, the magic is gone now, so I kind of don't really want to listen to any more sets.
I think so too, yes. Yeah, I mean, like what I try to show is like there's really nothing sophisticated to it. So like, I mean, for example, like these, like some people were saying like, oh, the mixer sounds so crisp and like, what are you doing? And like, I'm not doing much. So like I think it's just, so I think it's very important to get the loudness between the different voices right. And you need to make space in the arrangement. So I think actually that's the most important part of it. Like, so I always think of it like music is full at some point. So like there's the point of like, that's it. You cannot add anything anymore. And so like, if you want to use powerful sounds, then the music is full very quickly. And so you need to find ways of like, how can you pack more things if you want to add more things? And so one thing is like, for example, for the drum patterns, like if you want to have very heavy hitting kicks and you want to have deep bass, then you need to make the drums sparse. There's no other way because like it just doesn't fit anymore. And so it's kind of like, so I always try to just, well, first of all, have some kind of just separation between the sounds, like just, when the kick plays, the bass usually does not play because it would just create weird wobble sounds. Sometimes I do because I want the wobble sounds, but like then it's very purposely done. And so the other thing that is very important, I think, is just contrast. So that like, so that means like, for example, when you want to have the bass appear very strong, then I think it's important that like, that you also make a pause so that like, because like if you just play like a continuous bass note, then your brain will very quickly just adjust to that level and it will kind of automatically fade down. And it's like, I think it's the same for pretty much everything. So like if you look at an image and you don't have color contrast, then like your eyes will just adapt and like stop seeing this weird color, which can be very dangerous when you make weird looking camera images. So you always need to recalibrate yourself and make sure that you have like contrast. So like not only bass, but something that is also high, and just so that your brain does not completely get tricked by it. And I think that's much more important than just pure mixing skill. So like I'm using 3 bands of EQ. Sometimes I might pan something a little bit. I have these reverb sends and I use lots of saturation, probably more than I should. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my knowledge or techniques of mixing are similar. Like I just, it's funny when the Soundstage came out, I was kind of like, oh, yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. Like I was
exactly.
like, there's like 4 levels, and I think about them kind of vertically, like the bass is down here and you try to keep things in the middle and then it kind of goes like this.
Yep,
and
exactly.
Like it just gets wider, and I always think of it as sort of layers like that. Like the kick and the bass are in similar layers, maybe the same layer, hopefully not exactly the same layer, or there's some sidechain happening.
And it also physically prevents you from like packing too much into like one region, right? Like
exactly.
Because there's already something plugged in. So it's like
exactly.
Even though I'm not using this module, it still kind of changed a little bit how I approach mixing. Just like yeah, it's kind of still in my mind a bit, like in the background, because like yeah, in the like you can do the same thing with the mixer, right? Like it's just
Yeah,
more
exactly. Yeah,
explicit.
and I mean, I've never owned or used a soundstage. It's just it fits with the way that I sort of organize the sound in my head. And I know when I did the talk with Josh after my Mod Nights set, he mentioned something about like, oh, the mix is so good, blah blah blah. And I was like, I mean, it was just the rhythm and the digatone. Like there was no like it wasn't doing anything after that. It was just like the sound design and the arrangement and stuff was like
Exactly.
I just take those things into consideration. Like I need something in here, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, you said sound design, and it's like, I think also super important, or like the way I see it. Like, so if I want to make a pad sound, I just make sure that it doesn't have bass while I create it. So like, of course, I would just have to remove it anyways, right? So I like,
Exactly.
so I try to, it's like, yeah, sure. Like sometimes it can happen if you do like super crazy modulation, but then it's just showing me like, well, maybe I should not do that. Go for something else and just try not to create these problems in the beginning.
Yeah,
And
it's like the classic studio thing of, oh, we'll fix it later,
yeah,
like we'll fix it
exactly.
in post. And I'm like, can we just get it right now? I mean, it'll take like 5 minutes, like just thinking back to days of recording bass guitar and hearing that sort of thing. And I'm like, I'd rather have it sound right for the mix coming out of my amp
Exactly.
than to try to EQ it with like yeah, just a channel EQ.
Yeah, like, and it's also this, where it has been this trend for a very long time now, like that people make their mixes super clean, right? Like they use low pass, high pass filters on every sound and like cut out like only tiny pieces that they keep. And it's one of these things that I feel like are a bit too much. So like, so I pretty much do not do that at all. So like I just try to make sounds that are clean enough that I don't have to fix them. And
Hmm.
so the part of the reason for me is that like when I like approach such a live set, so like when I make the sounds, so I think of the sounds like in a way of like what is their lifespan and like how interesting are they, and so are these sounds that can stand on their own, or do they need like a partner sound that plays against them. And so what I try to make each sound in a way that I can just like mute everything around it, and or like with like this corresponding second sound, so that I can mute everything around it and it still sounds interesting. But like if you high and low pass everything in like these sounds, then these sounds sound horrible on their own. And so it just, yeah, I just like it to have like proper full sounds in the mix, and yeah, rather make the sounds not too fat, and than than having to cut them later essentially.
Oh boy.
And it's like, I think this is something that is also very different with this analog mixing, right? Like for me it's super easy to make like every sound like much more powerful, right? Like I just crank the gain of my mixer channel and it just becomes much more dirty and distorted in an acceptable way, and I can shape it with the EQ a bit. And so this is something that takes a few seconds to adjust, and then the sound is just as I want it to be. And so it's kind of like not cutting things away, but just only adding as much saturation as is needed, I guess.
Sometimes that's a lot.
Sometimes it's a lot. For the aim and break, it always helps a lot. Like it fills out everything. Um, so yeah, I think that's pretty much what I had in mind for today. So,
Sweet. That was awesome. I mean, it was a lot and my brain feels kind of full. Like I feel like maybe a little smoke came out of my ears a little while ago.
yeah,
But it was super interesting all the way. Like I feel like I saw somebody, maybe Duffy, say in in the chat like, oh, like I'm not doing enough modulation, and it's interesting to hear other people talk through because I feel like I mean part of it for me is I think the most I've ever like modular wise, the most I've ever played out of is like a single like 7U
Mhm.
IntelliGel case. And so I feel like maybe if I had a bunch of like the triat or quadrats in there, like I could have a bunch of modulation patched up and then sort of play it live a little more to
Mhm.
like vary the modulation. But I just feel like for me, when I have too much modulation patched, I feel like I've sort of lost control of the machine a little bit sometimes.
Yeah,
And I
if
kind of think like, oh, I want to do something else, and then I'm like, I don't know what it's like. I've completely lost the plot on where the modulation is coming from and
yeah,
going
yeah. So
because it's just like a rat's nest of patch cables. And so for me, I end up keeping it a little simpler and either just like using my two hands to modulate things, or uh, yeah, just sort of relying on simpler modulation. But then I get into that same path that you mentioned where it's like, well, I don't want it to sound like an LFO. So then it ends up being either really subtle or really slow. And sometimes you want something else. Or it's just like like I use the Piston Honda or the Mimetic Digitalis for like sequenced modulation. And those two like I know super well. I mean the Mimetic isn't super complicated, but I know them both well enough that I can just sort of like live jam on them. But then when I see like, oh, this is coming through here, and then these two things are getting combined, and then they're going through a filter, and then one of the filter outputs is, audio rate modulating something else. I was just like, I've completely lost what's happening at that point. Monkey brain doesn't work well at that point.
Yeah, so what I think is like this, so I really don't like to use like these external attenuators. So for me, like I also immediately forget like, so I will plug the cable and it's like, since there's four identical knobs, like I will already have forgotten like what does it actually do. And so,
Right.
so if possible, like like, it's actually something that I look at when buying modules that I just like that the main inputs already have attenuators on them. And yeah, I feel like so actually, yeah, in my modular, like most of the modules have lots of attenuators built in, and so these are the ones that I actually use. And so if it's just something
Totally.
like that I have to externally attenuate, then it's like I tend to shy away of just doing it.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love the industrial music, electronics, and Harvestman stuff that Scott builds because it's like there's basically an attenuverter on easy on everything. So I don't. I mean, first of all, it's like it's right there. Like I know what input it's attached to, rather than it being somewhere else in the case that I need to like follow the patch cord around to figure it out. But also, yeah, I don't need an external attenuverter at all. I mean, the only one that I have in my case really right now is the 1U, the Quadrat.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, unless I start using VCAs and stuff, and then again, like I can't keep up. I
Yeah,
mean, you can get really good, cool sounding modulation that way, but yeah, it
yeah.
just falls apart for me.
So I've just started like when I use these just the quadrat for example, like I it has some space where you can put just some tape and label it, and so like
Hmm.
so that's for example like when I actually try to do something specific that I would actually label these things for a certain live set because it takes me like 5 minutes to go through the whole patch and do it, and so then like it makes things so much easier. So also I use stages from Mutable, and so like at some point I just forget like which one was like the filter envelope again, and then you just So I just have label stickers for these things then.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, this has been really, really awesome. I'm glad
Thank you
we've
so
done the
much.
second one.
Yeah, thank you so much.
um, yeah, totally. Yeah, round of applause for Christoph. Um,
Thanks.
and yeah, are you playing again on Friday?
I don't know. Like,
Oh, okay, that's
depends
fine.
on whether the slot has been filled or not.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the lineup at all. Been busy, but yeah, I mean, I think we got the regular folks still hanging out at this point. But if there's anybody we don't know already hanging out in chat, we play on this channel at 8 p.m. Pacific on Fridays, like 8 till 10, like four, 25 or 30-minute sets. Of live hardware stuff. And if anybody's hanging out and wants to play, hit us up. Yeah. Shield and I are Twitch handles, I think, are there. Yeah, that's the Twitch logo. But yeah, you can find us on Instagram or wherever as well. Also the main Basement State account. I think all of our accounts are in the like the about section here on the Twitch channel.
And you can
This
also
is
find
super
us.
professional.
Yeah, you can also find us in like the Seattle Noise Discord and things like that. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you want to play, like hit us up. We're always up for new folks coming out and playing. But yeah, it's been fun so far. Cool.
well, awesome.
Well, let's call it a night then.
Yeah, thanks
Quit while we're ahead.
Yeah, thanks for everything, and see you next Friday, I guess.
See y'all.
See you all.